So today we begin a exploration of the Heart Sutra and use that as a way of stepping further into the teachings of the Great Way. And I think it's useful to sort of tell you the point I want to make today, and then I'll try and go, underlie it and build it up. But here's the essential point, and it's why we started with the question of a word that goes with real. And you could sum up a lot of what's in the Heart Sutra as the Buddha saying, life is vivid, but not real. There's a, compelling, heart touching, drawing you in, vividness to your experience. So there's whatever you're experiencing right now. I assume you're looking at a computer screen and listening to this talk. It's very vivid. And yet, it is truly not a thing. It is just electrons playing across a screen or causing vibrations on whatever speaker device and that sound wave traveling through the air to you, right? It's not a thing. So it's vivid, but not a thing. And I'm saying not a thing instead of real because for a long, long time, and I was really pleased with the answers of the question of, what goes with real: heartbreak, goodness, old age, um, elusive, all the answers that we had um, pointed how vivid things can be. Um, Present, right? That's part of the vividness, but they're not solid things. So it's useful to take a step back when you're, first beginning to contemplate this and ask about some assumptions. And there's a reason to do this. It's not just an intellectual exercise, but it'll sound a little intellectual to start with. Mostly what we mean by real in conversation has underneath of it, nobody said this, which I found very interesting, a quality of there's some steady something under our experience. So I hold up my cup and it feels real as if it was a solid thing. I mean, it has some solidity. It's holding my coffee, right? When I think of myself, I feel real. I have a history. I have a whole string of experiences that go together that create the story I call Brian, right? It has a realness, a thinginess to it. When I look at the world, and I'm looking out my window, and there's a rather large, garage building and a stand of birch trees, and it's like they look real. Um, they look like they're solid. They're going to stay there. There's a thinginess, and when it says in the Heart Sutra things like there's no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, it's basically saying the eye is not a thing. It's not a permanent thing. It's not denying that you have two eyes and that you see. The experience is vivid, but what we assume about it, oh, those are my eyes, those are very temporary things. They're not permanent. They're not just one thing, right? So there's a little bit of a philosophical dance happening. Here's the most important one, right? We assume that whatever you call yourself is real. In fact, it feels crazy to say, myself isn't real. But in the context of this teaching, yourself is not a permanent, indivisible thing. Or as my root teacher, the Vajraregent, would say, ain't no thing. It's not a thing, right? You can look for yourself, and you can look all over, and you will not find a solid permanent thing. You will find a vivid experience. So I have a vivid experience of being me. I go to sleep with it, I wake up with it, I carry it through one day to another, but it has changed. Who I am now is not who I was when I was younger, certainly not who I was when I was very young, like in grade school, and it might not be who I am next week. I've gone through several major changes in my life. If it was permanent, that couldn't happen. It's not solid. You can't x-ray and find self, right? Uh, it doesn't have a set location. Sometimes it feels it's in my heart, sometimes it's in my head, sometimes it's in the things I own. It's an experience that we're having. And so the teachings are pointing at experience is very vivid. And our minds have this trick that they play on us that makes it feel as if the experience that is very vivid is actually solid and permanent, and especially this experience. And then when you look out at the world, it feels like your world is very solid. But, it's very interesting to be traveling, and my world is the opposite of solid. I've been living out of a suitcase, and I, find like it. Do I have that? I don't know. Is it in the case? I can't find it. I thought I put it in there. Maybe it's there. Maybe it's not. Right? The vivid wanting, the vivid finding, the vivid losing it again. This morning I was looking for a pair of scissors. Of course, you can't carry scissors on board an airplane. Um, I think there's a pair of scissors in the bag. I looked, I can't find them. I think they'll pop out vividly sometime in the next few days, right? It's that sort of like it's there, it's not there, right? So that's the prime thing I want to say as we begin. The whole purpose of the Heart Sutra is to sort of pull the rug out from assuming you're real and the world is real. And it does that using a bit of Buddhist philosophy and psychology from the, you know, first century of our era, right? Um, so I'm just going to say one more thing, and next week we'll go into the no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, and you know, no formation, no consciousness, no feeling. Like we'll go into all those and why those are there. But the whole point is to begin to notice, and where this actually helps change your heart and grow your practices. Oh, whatever's happening to me is very vivid but not real. So I'm at a funeral and the sorrow is vivid. My sister-in-law was married to my now deceased brother-in-law, I think for 55 years. That's a lifelong connection that just ended, heartbreakingly vivid. And present tense. And she's surrounded by a rather large family and a very loving community. There were a couple of hundred people at the funeral. They had a big, lunch afterwards. And, she's surrounded by a lot of community love. Also vivid. Sorrow and companionship and love all together at the same thing. It's not one thing or it ain't no thing. And it's not this thing. It's this vivid experience that's happening. When you begin to look at life that way, it frees you from the prison of thinking I'm real and that's real. And that's especially useful when you've been hurt or when you're in an argument and you want to hold on to the argument and I'm right or I'm wrong. Doesn't matter. Let's make ourselves right. That's the worst position because then it's really hard to let go. I'm right. I'm holding on to my opinion. This is the way it should be. You're having a vivid experience. And the Heart Sutra would point at it might be more interesting and useful to be curious about the vividness than it would be to hold on to being right. So that's where the action is. That's where the power of the Heart Sutra comes in for personal transformation. And I think this is worth exploring. The last thing I'm going to say, what jumped out at me, it talks about prajna paramita. So, loosely translated, the paramita is the action that takes you from being unenlightened to being enlightened. So it's as if you were crossing a river from one shore to the other shore. So that's what paramita, going to the other shore. And prajna literally means sharp or insightful understanding. So if you can cultivate the insight that life is vivid, not a thing, then that takes you across to full, complete enlightenment. That's what it says. And that's what makes it worth thinking about. With that, I'm going to pause the recording and I'd love to know what you think.